Hi, good morning. I'm John Morello. I'm the VP of Product for the Prisma Cloud product line at Palo Alto Networks. And today's session is on how Palo Alto Networks helps you secure the entirety of your cloud journey, your cloud footprint. Cloud is a big concept, and there's a lot of capabilities that go along with it. It's not just about securing CI/CD platforms or VPCs or EC2s or all the other kinds of components that come in that, but something that really requires a really broad-based set of capabilities that span not just the physical different form factors and capabilities that cloud offers, but also like the entire kind of temporal life cycle of cloud-based applications. And Palo Alto Networks is really uniquely suited to do that because as the largest cybersecurity company in the world, we really provide a very broad set of capabilities that are applicable for customers to help them secure everything from the beginning of the CI/CD cycle all the way through hardcore network security for their VPCs and the networking capabilities that they have in their cloud providers. So I'm joined by Jaimin Patel. He's going to come up in a little while as well to talk about the network security side of this. And then, of course, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So, I mentioned earlier that Palo Alto has a really broad set of capabilities around cloud security, but what does that really mean? Like, what are the different things that go into that? And you can really think about it, or at least we think about it from the Palo Alto standpoint, as being around these three major domains. When we say cloud security, we're really talking about securing the cloud technologies, EC2 instances, Fargate, EKS, the kinds of technologies that you're utilizing directly from the cloud service provider. But that gives you one dimension of what's required for security. There's also the analytics aspect of that. Like, how do you integrate cloud with your overall security operations center workflows? I don't think any customer out there would say that they want to have a cloud security approach that keeps their cloud technologies and the data and the analytics that they have for them siloed and separate and requires different workflows than what they use for managing security incidents and vulnerabilities and so forth for their non-cloud environments, desktops and mobile, and as well as like their traditional on-premises data center or whatever they have left of that. So one of the other aspects that we do, and that's the Cortex product line at Palo Alto Networks, is we have an entire XDR, an extended XDR detection and response capability that allows customers to integrate with cloud technologies as well so that they can have a singular place to view that information and do threat hunting across all the different places where they have data and applications and workloads running. And that allows them to ingest data from cloud security technologies like Prisma Cloud so that they can have a singular place to view that and understand their risk posture and take action on that risk posture in an efficient way, not purely isolated to what they have in cloud. And then finally, of course, what Palo Alto Networks is probably best known for, at least first known for, was really redefining what firewalls were with the next-gen firewall. And firewalls and network security continues to be a really critical aspect of any kind of security architecture that a customer might be using, be it in the cloud or be it on premises, or as most customers are today, some kind of hybrid of the two. And one of the really great capabilities that we offer as Palo Alto Networks is the ability for you to have a consistent and industry-leading set of capabilities across all the network interfaces that you have, both in your cloud and your on-premises environments, remote offices, et cetera, that allow you to have a consistent way to apply the capabilities that a next-gen firewall gives to you across all those different places. And Jaimin's going to talk about some of the unique things that we do to tune next-gen firewall technologies for the cloud and our VM series and CN series products. And he'll go into that into some detail, but I'm going to focus first on the area that I know best around Prisma Cloud, which is the platform that Palo Alto Networks has, again, for securing all aspects of cloud technologies that you're consuming from a cloud service provider across all the different form factors that those applications may be running on and across that entire temporal dimension from build to code to ship to run, to allow you to really have a holistic way to protect your applications across all the different cloud environments that you run in. When we had Twistlock, so I was the CTO at Twistlock, and we sold the company to Palo Alto Networks a few years ago. But we had this slide that really has not changed a whole lot, honestly, in the past few years, because these are just kind of fundamental truths about what makes cloud security different than traditional security. It's an entirely valid question that people asked, probably more so a few years ago than they do today, but people would say, like, well, why do I need to have a cloud security technology? Why can't I use the things that I already have for vulnerability management, Why can't I use the things that I have now for anti-malware, for whatever other security tooling that people already had invested in? What's the need for having something different? Why is cloud different? Obviously there's the very clear difference in the sense that it's not your computer that you're running on anymore, and there's a different kind of experience for integrating and operating that environment. But I think the more fundamental things that are different, that really drive the necessity of a different approach to cloud security, are what you see here on this slide. So the first one is the constant change that exists in cloud environments. Now, you could certainly say that historical IT environments that you operate in your own data center, those always had a degree of change as well. But if you compare and contrast like the rate of change and how constant that change was, it's much more frequent and much more aligned with the cloud pattern for that environment, that infrastructure, to be changing on a much more rapid basis. And I give people a simple example of that. Think about maybe 10 years ago, you deployed a VM into your data center. That virtual machine, it was probably like some dude went into a console and typed in commands or clicked through a UI, and he assigned an IP address to that, and he gave it a host name, and he installed some kind of software on that. And in a lot of cases, that thing was going to continue to run more or less unchanged. Hopefully people patched it, sometimes they didn't, but more or less unchanged for years, right? Like everybody's got that database or that ERP system or whatever that's been running for maybe more than a decade even. But in any case, like you would create something and that thing would be kind of implicitly built to be a long-lived entity. You may have heard that notion of cattle versus pets. That was the pet. It was something that was curated by an individual. There was a system administrator. They knew the kind of the personality of that thing, if you will, about how it was configured. And if they needed to update something, they would probably SSH into it or RDP into it, and they would reconfigure that thing. But the fundamental operating system instance will continue to run as it had been for months or years prior to that. And that's really different than what you see, at least increasingly today in cloud, which is the notion that everything is deployed as code. Obviously you guys, I'm sure, are very familiar with infrastructure as code, and CloudFormation as exemplary, as infrastructure as code implementation. That basically is designed to kind of eliminate that notion of operating entities as pets. Everything is designed to be redeployed as necessary so that you're not worried about the individual virtual machine, the individual EC2 instance. It doesn't have a personality. It is cattle in the sense that you've got a lot of these things. If one of them becomes problematic for whatever reason, you'll probably just destroy it and redeploy a new one. Or if you need more of them, you'll just redeploy more of them. And maybe like when you need less of them, you just delete a bunch of them. So that environment that historically might have been a lot more static is changing a lot more frequently now. In addition to that, though, there's just a lot more stuff that you have to secure. Again, think about our example from 10 years ago. If I had that data center, I probably had a VM maybe for each application, and those VMs, again, they would run more or less statically for a long time, and I had a set number of physical servers or blades or whatever that I was running that stuff on. But it was, for most organizations, even the ones that were very large, it was things that people could kind of quantify and keep in their head. And people might say like, well, I'm responsible for running the VMs that are in this data center that align with this application or whatever it may be. But if you contrast that to what we have today with cloud, as applications become decomposed and people are running them in a more microservices-based approach, that single application that might have run as like a 3-tiered service, you had a VM for the front end, you had a VM for the application tier, and a VM for the back end. Maybe you had a couple of each of them for redundancy. If you take that same application, though, and you decompose that into microservices, you might have a dozen different microservices for the front end, right? You might have one that just provides a logon experience, something that just delivers imagery, something else that does the shopping cart, et cetera. And those are all containerized applications, or maybe you even run them as Lambda functions. And you think about how that spreads throughout the organization. What we saw as Twistlock and as Prisma Cloud now is that people in many cases have literally an order of magnitude more entities that they're dealing with. So literally more than 10x the number of entities that they were dealing with on a per application basis as that application is decomposed and run as microservices. And so not only are those things changing all the time, but there's just a whole lot more of them that you have to deal with. And the final thing is that there is now this really an opportunity to do security better by being able to integrate with the lifecycle approach to security. So in other words, as everything becomes code, as your application is now no longer something that you've got a Word document that tells a human being how to go and click and install and change registry keys or conf files or whatever to set it up. As that now becomes something that you just have as a cloud formation template and a set of AMIs or container images that you're going to deploy, you now have this opportunity with security to be able to integrate earlier into the lifecycle of that application to find problems and eliminate those problems before they ever get deployed. And so the challenge is there, if you don't have that capability, it's very difficult to try to secure things when you have a lot more of them and they're changing a lot more frequently if you don't have that full lifecycle coverage. And so when we think about like just kind of the fundamental aspects of how do we build Prisma Cloud and how does Palo Alto Networks overall look at cloud security, we're really trying to build a product, a set of capabilities that helps customers address these unique capability challenges in the cloud. So obviously Amazon is a leader in cloud. They've really kind of defined and continue to be by far the largest provider in cloud services. And we've really tried to make sure that what we do with Prisma Cloud is enhancing and integrated well with the services that customers are already utilizing in AWS. And there's many examples. I'm certainly not going to read the entire list here, but these are just some of the services that we have integrations within Prisma Cloud, some of the AWS services that we're integrated within Prisma Cloud. So Prisma Cloud is this platform that we have that's really designed to allow customers to take advantage of all the capabilities that cloud service providers offer, but to do so in a way that provides the right level of security gates, the right kinds of controls, detection, response capabilities to augment what Amazon and others provide to allow you to meet your security objectives even when you're utilizing all these services that are there. So, some examples of that we do is, S3 is a great service, right? Everybody probably is utilizing S3 for various data storage and sharing purposes already. Well, one of the things that we've done with S3 is integrate with it such that we can utilize the unique security capabilities that Palo Alto Networks has from our Wildfire service and our autofocus service to enable us to be able to find things that are anomalous in those S3 buckets. So for example, you might say, well, I want to make sure that none of my S3 buckets have personally identifiable information or health-related information or social security numbers in that. We can do all that, but we can also look at those buckets and find malware that might be embedded inside of a PDF file or some other content that you've got on that S3 bucket. And again, that leverages the whole set of capabilities that we have in Palo Alto Networks, because how do we find that malware? We're utilizing the same Wildfire service and the same kind of visibility we have from literally hundreds of thousands of firewalls running across the entire world. All the data that's flowing through them, all the analytics and intelligence that we have from all those customers from the next-gen firewall standpoint informs that Wildfire service, which then helps you better inform the capabilities that we're able to deliver for S3. So for Prisma Cloud, our goal here is to really, again, augment, to build on top of, to integrate really well with the services that the cloud providers offer to you so that you're not having to make a choice of, do I utilize this new technology that AWS has? It's really cool. It's going to make my developers' life easier, my infrastructure team's life easier. Instead, just to be able to be confident that you're going to have the security controls that you need to operate that. So some examples that we offer, from probably a more specific standpoint, if you think about some of the AWS services that are the foundational building blocks for running infrastructure in the cloud, obviously EC2 is one of those, ECS, EKS, the Kubernetes service. Our goal with this was to provide a set of capabilities there that, again, augmented what you get from those. So we're not trying to provide better isolation from one EC2 instance to another, right? That's what the cloud provider is offering. AWS does a great job of providing that isolation already, but what we're trying to do is to make sure that we can look at that AMI that you're going to deploy into that EC2 instance before it's ever deployed, find out whether it's got vulnerabilities, that it has security misconfigurations. After it's been deployed, do you have malware that runs in it? Do you have some vulnerability that's discovered in an application or operating system component post-deployment? And we're trying to provide this set of capabilities in a really flexible way so that our customers have the greatest degree of choice about how to do that. So we don't have a religious view about agents versus agentless. We have both, and we encourage customers to use whichever one makes the most sense for them in any given part of their environment. So if you need to have the preventative, proactive capabilities that you only get with an agent, that's awesome. We have that in our Defenders for Prisma Cloud. However, if you say, I just want to have an easy way to get very broad visibility about vulnerabilities, compliance, potentially malware that might be in those EC2 instances, we can do that via agentless as well. And we can provide a singular view of all of that information regardless of how you gather that inside that Prisma Cloud console, which is all API accessible to you, so it's all available in open formats. And it's also got pre-built integrations with things like SQS and Slack and Jira and PagerDuty and so forth that you may want to send that data to as well. And of course, we focus on really supporting not just the breadth of the form factors that AWS offers, but also the underlying technologies that support those form factors. So if you want to use Graviton, we support Graviton. Of course, we support all the x86 instances as well. So the ability for you, again, to utilize whatever sorts of AWS provided capabilities that are important to your organization, our goal is to be in all the places that you want to be and to, again, provide you the most flexibility in terms of how do you protect those environments through a combination of agents and agentless approaches, all of which are integrated, again, across that entire life cycle. So if we step back and think about, like, this notion of this software development life cycle, in general, there's these kind of 4 major steps to it. Code, where your developers are actually coding, building, designing the application, writing the actual source code for it. Build, where you're utilizing probably today some kind of automated continuous integration approach, like Jenkins is a very popular one, of course. CodeFresh is another one that you may have heard of. To actually take those things that people have built and combine them with open source components and actually generate some kind of executable artifact, a Lambda function, or a container image that you might put into an ECR registry and then run later. So build is about assembling things into an executable runtime package. Deployment, of course, is about making that thing run. So deployment could be anything from saying we're going to set up a new EC2 instance, to it could also be saying I've got a YAML file that declares the entire topography of my application, which I'm going to pass to EKS and have it spin up maybe dozens of different images that are going to compose this application that I've run as different microservices. And then run, of course, is the phase in which you're actually executing that application, right? The application is receiving traffic, it's doing whatever it does, sending data back to the end user. So the thing that we're trying to do with Prisma Cloud, again, is to provide a consistent set of capabilities across those different phases of the lifecycle. And uniquely, because we're able to do that for the far left part of this illustration, we can really prevent a lot of things that are negative or that are insecure from ever going further in that lifecycle. So the earlier insecurity that you can find a problem and remediate that problem, the better it is, right? The lower the risk, the lower the cost, the less friction there is for your development team. So, from a build or from a code standpoint, one of probably the most common or easily identifiable things that we do there is to look at your infrastructure as code. So your CloudFormation template, before you ever create that infrastructure, we can look at that and say, like, hey, are you trying to create an S3 bucket that's world readable, for example? Do I have a VPC that's being created by this IAC code that doesn't have a security group attached to it? So those kinds of controls that we can do before it ever even leaves the developer's environment. From a build time standpoint, as you're executing those build jobs, we can look for vulnerabilities that might exist in the images that you're building or the function that you're creating. So let's say that you've got a developer who's building a new kind of mobile-focused application. They're creating some Lambda function that supports that application. We can look at build time when their Jenkins job is running to actually create the function, determine whether or not the function has a critical vulnerability, and if it does, prevent that function from being pushed up to the Lambda repository, and thus ever exposing you to risk later. Deployment time is obviously about what can you do about the kind of the moment in time that you're actually doing that deployment push. So, we talked about a moment ago this notion of I might have a YAML that's got a bunch of different container images that are in it that's going to run this large application on EKS. At deployment time, we can have checks that are there that says if that image, or if one of the images in that YAML includes a critical vulnerability or is configured to run as root or runs with privilege, I can prevent that thing from being deployed. So I don't have to worry about finding and remediating that problem after it's been already created. I can stop that problem from ever happening in the first place. And then finally, at runtime, of course, is all the things that we can do to intercept and inspect traffic going to the application, be able to find malware, to prevent that malware from executing, the set of capabilities we have around web app and API security. Those are all the things that we do at runtime, in addition to, of course, being able to check the configuration of the underlying cloud services and make sure that they're secure and healthy and configured in accordance with your enterprise policies. So if you take all those things, you combine all that stuff together, what we're really trying to do is to reduce your costs as a customer, reduce the amount of work that you have to do, reduce ultimately the risk that you're exposed to. And that combined set of capabilities, what we're doing that's really unique there across that time-based horizon, across all those physical form factors and different AWS services, That's really our implementation, our delivery of what we're calling the Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, which is a term Gartner has coined recently that really describes platforms like Prisma Cloud that provide this holistic set of capabilities across the life cycle of the application, across all the various different kinds of workloads and form factors that the customers may be running. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamin now, and he'll talk about the network security angle. And again, we'll be happy to take some questions at the end of that.
Thank you, John. All right, perfect. That was John Morello. Thank you. Thanks, John, for showing how our customers can use Prisma Cloud as a unified and comprehensive application protection platform. So switching gears a little bit, just checking the clicker. All right, it works. Cloud is the most complex network, and network is the least common denominator that must be protected. What do I mean by this least common denominator? We were just giving you an example. Early days, we were writing apps on bare metal servers, 1990s or even before that. Now, in early 2000s, we started writing apps on VMs. Now, it's all about containers. So we are moving from bare metals to now writing apps on VMs to containers. But there is one thing that has not changed at all, and that is the network. Network is the only constant. Why is that constant? If you still know all these apps, it doesn't matter what the form factor is, containers or VMs, they still run on the very same network OSI stack. Now, the network protocols are still the same. TCP, IP, BGP, DNS, DHCP. They were the exact same even 20, 30 years ago, and now it is still the same. Not a change a bit. Because the network is the constant, so is the network security and the need for network security. Just because you moved your apps from private cloud to public cloud, or because you transformed your apps from VMs to containers, doesn't mean that the need for network security has just gone away. It is still the same. So now, if you remember that network is the constant, then I get this question from thousands of customers before. Now we have VM series, our virtual firewall, software firewalls, we have tens of thousands of customers. And now they say, new customers are asking us the same question. Why do I need next generation firewalls as a network security tool in public cloud? Well, there are three top risks that next generation firewalls protect you against. The first risk, which is the most critical, and probably 95% of our customers use next generation firewalls to protect against that risk. And that first risk is allowing applications to connect outbound to the internet. Because you are deploying your applications in the public cloud, that means they have to connect to the internet at some point to download software updates or to access some sort of APIs from Facebook, Google, or other third-party services. Because you are opening those applications access to the internet, you are exposing the same applications to download malwares. You are exposing the same applications to connect to the command and control servers. And also, the same applications are subject to data exfiltration. And next generation firewalls are used by all these customers to protect against that single most threat. The second one, the second risk, the second most important one is unknown and unpatched vulnerabilities. As an industry, we are all trying to shift left. Everybody is trying to shift left. We want security to be baked into CI/CD pipeline, where we all want to patch as many vulnerabilities as we can before even we run our code in production. But to get to that nirvana state where there are no vulnerabilities is just impossible to achieve. It's a race against the time. Log4j, for example, existed for 7 years before it was discovered last December. It existed. Even Palo Alto Networks, we had thousands of hosts with Log4j vulnerability. Because when the vulnerability itself is not known to the world and CVE is not announced, what are you going to patch it with? There is no patch available. It's unknown. So even in your environment today, there would be hundreds of vulnerabilities existing, but you wouldn't know because there is nothing that you can do about it. There is no CVE. There is no patching available. Same thing with unpatched vulnerabilities. you will always have these unpatched vulnerabilities where enterprises need more time to patch them. They take weeks or months, and next generation firewall provides you that added layer of protection while your development teams are working to patch them. So because when Log4j happened, we had thousands of hosts, as I mentioned, but because we had next generation firewall as a layer, it gave our development team, DevOps teams, time to do the patching, and they were still feeling safe because there was the additional protection layer available. And the third one is the lateral movement of threat, east-west. In a true zero trust philosophy, when you have one application exposed to the internet, the other application that it connects to also needs to be secured. That other application needs to be secured not just from the internet connections, but also from connections that are coming from its peer applications. Because what happens in the east-west scenario is when you have one application compromised, which is connected to the internet, the threat will spread laterally from application to the other application it is connected to. And that is where our customers use next generation firewall to prevent that east-west spread of the network-based attacks, right? So top 3 reasons: outbound connections, unknown and unpatched vulnerabilities, and lateral movement of threat. When you have these 3 risks, customers use next generation firewalls to protect against these threats. All right, so from cloud network security perspective, we have 3 form factors to offer to you. The first one is the virtualized network security with our VM series firewall. We introduced VM series firewalls in 2013. Next year, we'll be celebrating 10-year anniversary of our product, adopted by tens of thousands of customers now. CN series is a new product specifically designed to secure container workloads. CN series was launched in 2020, so it's a 2-year-old baby product. And Cloud NGFW is a minion, recently launched about just a couple of months back. Cloud NGFW is a managed firewall as a service, cloud-native managed firewall service, and I will deep dive into each 3 of these products. So 2 self-managed products. If you're looking for something like virtual appliances, VM series and CN series are your virtualized and container firewall form factors respectively. If you want to go on a self-driving network security, cloud next generation firewall, specifically designed for AWS, is the one right for you. All right, so we are the security vendor, very strong security partner for AWS. We have been partnering with them since 2013, 2014, but very actively since 2017. We have been the launch partner of AWS since the days of GuardDuty and AWS Security Hub, traffic mirroring, gateway load balancer. In the last couple of years, if you see, in 2021, last reInvent, we introduced CN series in AWS Marketplace, where we became the only security vendor to partner with AWS as their launch partner to launch Marketplace for Containers Anywhere. So our container firewalls are listed as in AWS Marketplace now. 2022, 2 companies, hundreds of engineers together from 2 different companies, AWS and Palo Alto Networks, worked together as one single team to launch Cloud NGFW. Okay? And that is something that we are extremely proud of. Let's take 4 to 5 minutes on each of the products so that you get a good summary of all 3. So VMC is virtualized firewalls. One, very recently, this is something latest that we introduced. How many of you have deployed our firewalls in AWS? Anybody? Right? Some. If you are our customers and have been using Panorama as your orchestration mechanism, now you have the ability to deploy VM series firewalls in just a few clicks into AWS environments. So Panorama orchestrates VM series deployment completely from Panorama console. You do not have to learn anything about AWS. So our customers, if you have been managing our on-prem firewalls from Panorama, Panorama, by the way, those who are new, is our single pane of glass that can manage hardware firewalls, VM series firewalls, container firewalls deployed in branch locations, on-prem data centers, public cloud, multiple public cloud, and so forth. Panorama has the ability to manage up to 1,000 plus firewalls from a single pane of glass. From that Panorama, if you do not know enough about AWS, you do not have expertise, but you are still tasked to secure AWS workloads, but you know Panorama very well. Panorama orchestrated VM series deployment is the right tool for you. It will bring you up to speed, and you'll be able to start securing AWS workloads in about 30 minutes. Okay? It will, in just a few clicks, it will not only deploy all the AWS constructs necessary to host the firewalls, including VPCs, transit gateway, gateway load balancers, gateway load balancer endpoints, but it will also orchestrate VM series so that VM series can come up in just a few minutes. Now, definitely you get enhanced monitoring and increased scale. You also can specify auto-scaling parameters. In and out, you can say, after 80% of vCPU utilization, I want my firewalls to auto-scale. There you go. You just specify this rule, and Panorama will take care of orchestrating the firewalls with auto-scale parameters. Now, I want to give you one case study here with a customer. So some of you might have used this online travel company to come to Reinforce to book your travel. This company had 2 or 3 requirements. They had thousands of VPCs, not just few tens, like thousands of VPCs. They were treating, like John mentioned, they wanted to treat security like cattle, not like pets. They just wanted to orchestrate and automate everything, infrastructure as a code. And they wanted to definitely have all these outbound connections that were becoming very difficult to manage. They decided to go with VM series firewall, and now they are able to secure all these thousands of VPCs. They can automate complete security in a very CI/CD way. They are using our advanced URL filtering capabilities and threat prevention from Palo Alto Networks to protect against outbound and inbound threats. Let's shift gears and talk about CN series, the containerized firewall that we introduced. It's industry's first next-generation firewall for Kubernetes environments specifically. Okay? And CN series gives you 3 key benefits. You get layer 7 visibility and context within the Kubernetes environment. Here, network security team and DevOps teams, they are speaking the same language. NetSec teams are no longer writing rules based on IP addresses and subnets. They are all writing rules based on Kubernetes labels. Containers are multi-cloud, so as CN series. CN series can help you protect your containers deployed in any cloud. And the third one that is resonating very well nowadays with network security admins is the ability to dynamically scale firewalls as their applications scale. Right? So 3 key benefits. And the most common question that I get asked is, why can I not use VM series firewall? Why can I not use virtual VM series firewall to protect containers? The answer is, you can, but not very effectively. And that is why CN series was born. So I'll give you an example. On the right-hand side, what you see here is like a Kubernetes cluster. I have 2 namespaces. So in the world of Kubernetes, you have compute nodes that you allocate within the cluster. On top of these nodes, you have multiple namespaces. In the world of Kubernetes, this namespace is the construct that is used to segment your applications. Within this namespace, you run Kubernetes or container pods. So as you can see, the green is the ordering namespace. There is a payments microservice, payments namespace, and there are green pods, the hexagons that you see are running on top of compute nodes. And there are also orange pods that are running on the same compute nodes. So you host on the very same compute node pods belonging to different namespaces. The thing with networking is, when the traffic from ordering pod gets out of the cluster, it gets network address translated to the node IP address. So if you have a virtual firewall sitting outside the cluster, because the form factor is virtual, it cannot be sitting within the cluster. So it has to sit outside the Kubernetes cluster. And when the traffic goes from green pod out to the node and hits the VM series firewall, it gets netted to the node IP address. So all that the firewall sees is the node IP address and not the green IP versus orange IP. So all your security policies are all based on the node IP address. You completely lose the ability to write differentiated or fine-grained policies based on the individual namespace. And if you cannot do that, what's the use of a firewall if you do not have the ability to write policies that can say ordering, you should do this, versus namespace pod, you are allowed to do this, right? Ordering versus payments. You do want to write differentiated policies. And that is why VM series is ineffective in protecting containers. And that is why you need a containerized form factor of firewall, which is CN series, which sits right within the cluster and gives you that pod-to-pod level visibility and can differentiate between two namespaces, and you can write fine-grained policies. Okay? Use cases wide, it gives you the same three use cases: outbound, inbound, and east-west. The one case study here is major online retail company, a leader in the floral industry, by the way. They have this company exists for over a century. The largest floral network in the world, connecting customers with the florist network to deliver flowers on the very same day. A global network, very major operation. They had a very interesting scenario. Without CN series, what were they doing? They were hosting one application in every single container cluster. One application, hosted in one Kubernetes application cluster. Another app, another cluster. And between the two clusters, they would send the traffic through the VM series virtual firewall to protect. What happens after that is the compute utilization in each of this cluster is extremely poor. So they get a huge bill in their mail. They say, oh, my compute is so inefficiently utilized because I'm hosting only one application per cluster. That is like going back to 1990s when we were running just one application per bare metal server. So the CIO mandates that, guys, we need to consolidate all the applications into fewer Kubernetes clusters. So the team starts the consolidation exercise. But guess what? They had PCI sensitive applications along with non-sensitive applications. All needed to come together in a single Kubernetes cluster. So how do you protect that PCI app that needs to be protected against all those non-sensitive apps, right, within the same cluster? So how do you do this inter-app protection within the same cluster? And CN series was the answer, because you cannot have VM series in between the namespaces. So they created PCI namespace, they created non-PCI application in another namespace, and between the two namespaces, the traffic was being sent via CN series firewall. And with that, they were able to consolidate the apps and also they optimized the cost. With that, let's switch gear and talk about Cloud NGFW, the last and the third most important pillar in our cloud network security portfolio. Let's look at it from the lens of two practitioners: network security administrator and the cloud administrator. What does the network security team really want in cloud? They want the best-in-class network security. From security efficacy standpoint, this team is not willing to compromise anything. They want layer 7 protection, they want threat prevention, URL filtering, and all the capabilities that any next-generation firewall provides. But the cloud ops team, the DevOps team, they want to move fast. And what do they need is the cloud-native ease of use. Until now, enterprises were suffering because they were getting only one of these two. With our VM series firewall or CN series firewalls, they would definitely get best-in-class security from Palo Alto Networks, with our security efficacy as high as like close to 100%. They were getting it, but VM series and CN series firewalls were virtual appliances, very difficult to manage because they are not delivered as a service. So some customers may find it difficult. Versus cloud-native ease of use was provided by the cloud-native firewalls. But from security efficacy standpoint, some customers may complain that the efficacy is not high as Palo Alto Networks firewalls. So customers were just compromised. They were getting one or the other. So we partnered with AWS to deliver Cloud NGFW. So after a year of effort, hundreds of engineers working together as one single team, we launched Cloud NGFW about 2 months back, where you get both. So the modern enterprises need both best-in-class security from Palo Alto Networks, and it's a perfect marriage between Palo Alto and AWS with best-in-class security and cloud-native ease of use. So what are the things that Cloud NGFW provides? It's the first third party to integrate with AWS Firewall Manager. So from workflow perspective, you see the exact same workflow as AWS Cloud Native Firewall, right? It integrates into the way you work with AWS today, just like how you operate S3 or VPC or gateway load balancers. It is as cloud native as any other AWS service. Okay? 4 things: ease of setup and procurement. You procure Cloud NGFW through Marketplace, so very easy to procure and set up. You are no longer not going to Panorama to manage it, download. There is no virtual appliance that you need to download. Zero maintenance because it is provided as a managed service. Palo Alto Networks takes care of deploying the firewall in the back end, auto-scaling for you, and so forth. So there is no maintenance for you. There is no upgrade requirement that you need to worry about. It's highly resilient. We provide our own SLA. I think it is 4 nines or 5 nines SLA. And we auto-scale the firewalls when your applications scale. Scalable policy management. So we have integrated with AWS Firewall Manager. So it's the most as cloud native as it can get. So from AWS Firewall Manager, you can write policies, security policies, to across multiple AWS accounts and multiple VPCs. You don't have to manage security policies differently for each account or different VPCs. It's all managed through Firewall Manager. So definitely check that out. And certainly automated next generation firewall provision. We have created this construct called next generation firewall resource. That's an abstract logical resource, but behind the scene, it might be hundreds of firewalls depending on your application need, but you don't see them. What you see is just a next generation firewall as a logical resource that is being managed by us, not by you. From availability standpoint, Cloud Next Generation Firewall is available across all the regions in North America and Europe, and most regions in JAPAC. Tokyo is also recently qualified. So the remaining regions in JAPAC will be available in the month of August. But Cloud NGFW is a regional service. And that's why I remember that because it's a regional service, you want the availability in your region. And most of the regions have been covered so far, except a few in JAPAC. How can you get to AWS? How can you download Cloud NGFW? There is nothing for you to download, but how can you access the service? You go to AWS Marketplace, and we provide 2 options: pay-as-you-go, post-paid option. Or if you are interested, you can also do long-term contract, 1, 2, and 3 years at a discounted rate. Maybe take your cameras out, and you can probably take this, scan this QR codes if you are interested. But there is a risk-free trial available for 7 days. Cloud NGFW, scan this free trial, and you will get right to on the last one. You will get right into the Cloud Marketplace listing that we have, and you can start your trial today. And if you have a need to extend, definitely reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do. With that, one case study about leading financial services company that wanted to automate security. So some of us like driving, like the feel of driving a car, and we really want to hold onto the steering wheel and want to get a feel of it. And some prefer autopilot. Some prefer self-driving car. In this case, and we offer both. With our VM-Series CNCS firewall, you get the best of all the capabilities that we have. You get full control. With Cloud NGFW, it's more like, hey, Palo Alto Networks, I don't care how you do this network security. Give me the way to autopilot and self-driving network security. So in this case, they wanted self-driving network security, and Cloud NGFW is something that they selected. And they used URL filtering capabilities for outbound connection management. Integrated with AWS Firewall Manager. And with that, the entire headache of managing firewalls is completely gone. So their DevOps teams and DevSecOps teams, they were extremely happy. And now they are much more secure. John and I get this question a lot, which is, you talked about Prisma Cloud, you talked about software firewalls. Do you have customers who are using both? And it was and the answer is yes. We have so many customers who are using both Prisma Cloud as well as software firewalls for 2 different purposes, 2 different teams, 2 different use cases. And it was reinforced again by, if you attended the keynote today, there is a data security aspect, there is an application security. It's all about defense in depth. You want network security in the perimeter, and then you also want application security. In this case, AMI Digital is using Prisma Cloud to secure applications for more than 17 million of their AMI customers. And they are also using VM series firewalls to secure all of their cloud network connections. And we have countless examples of such customers who are using Prisma Cloud for application security while they are using software firewalls for network security. I hope this was helpful, and with that, we open to Q&A. Questions? Everything was crystal clear? Okay, there is one. Please go ahead.
Hi, Jamin. Are you guys seeing customers of like VM series interested in moving more towards Cloud NG Firewall for AWS now that that's an option?
Yes, we do. We do see some customers who have been managing VM series firewalls. They may think that I no longer want to self-manage, and instead I do want to take advantage of Palo Alto Networks as a managed service offering. They would adopt to Cloud NGFW, and we are seeing that movement. But Cloud NGFW is a new product, so that adoption is very early to say whether it is just at scale or it's in the beginning phase. But we do get those questions asked. Some customers might say, oh, I am using Panorama as my central pane of glass, and because Cloud NGFW is so cloud native that it has, at this point, it has no connection with the Panorama, I will see whether whenever there is a Panorama integration, then I'll probably switch to Cloud NGFW. But the teams that are ready, they have no attachment with Panorama. Our customers are really attached to Panorama that we see. But customers who are not attached to Panorama, in fact, DevOps teams who do not know Panorama, they will say, wow, this is perfect for me. I do not know Panorama. I do not have to learn Panorama. I do not have to learn Palo Alto Networks technologies and security policies. I just want best practices all pre-configured, ready to go, and in 5 minutes, I can start securing AWS workloads. They just go directly into Cloud NGFW. Thank you for that question. Anybody else? Yes?
So you explained that you can use AWS Firewall Manager to send the alerting. So when the alert is triggered, do they go to Security Hub? How are people consuming the alerts that the Panorama series creates?
Yeah. So the question is, how are we consuming the alerts coming from Cloud NGFW through AWS Firewall Manager? Do they go to Security Hub or not? Right now, there is some integration that is being worked on with Security Hub, but right now they go to Firewall Manager only. And there would be a demo available at our booth if you are interested more in the development, because it's a SaaS service. The development happens constantly, and sometimes I do not keep track of all the latest and greatest features. But please definitely check out at the booth. You'll be able to see the demo.
Happy to take any questions on the Prisma Cloud content as well, if anybody wants to go through any of that. Okay, if not, thank you guys for joining us. We certainly appreciate your time. We have a booth down there. It's very prominent when you go down the escalator, so can't really miss it, but please stop by. You can see demos of all this, talk to myself and Jamin and others that'll be hanging out there and be able to answer any technical questions. But thanks again for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.